Focus on Art. A personal visit with the artists, museum curators, and gallery directors of northeastern Oklahoma. A presentation of the Rogers State College Art Department.
Welcome once again to Focus on Art. I'm your host, Barbara Cohen-Auer. Western art has a long tradition of artists who pay close attention to detail, and they strive to give the viewer a very accurate, precise picture of the visual world in which they live. This tradition is a major part of American painting, and it goes back to such great 19th century painters as John Audubon. Tonight on Focus on Art, my guest is one of northeastern Oklahoma's favorite and best known wildlife painters, Patrick Sawyer. Patrick, welcome to Focus on Art.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, we appreciate your taking time out to be with us. We usually begin by asking our guests to tell us just a little bit about themselves. So, where'd you go to school, so forth?
Well, I was born in Tulsa, went through grade school and high school, graduated from Daniel Webster High School in Tulsa, and from there went to Oklahoma State Tech in Okmulgee, took commercial art. After I finished there, I went into the service for 4 years and was stationed in Alaska, and really fell in love with the country up there, and came back and went to Tulsa Junior College for a while, and then from there just sort of went into doing art on a freelance basis commercially with illustration and all types of any kind of freelance work I could find, and but all along my first love was doing paintings. At that time I was working in oils and then went into acrylics, which is what I work in now.
So you are a full-time fine artist.
Right, I've been doing this for about 12 years now.
I bet you will do on occasion a commissioned work if you're asked to do something specifically, like a magazine cover, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into talking about your work in particular, I noticed that we have a few members of your family in our studio today. Right. We know that you're a father, and you want to tell us about your family?
Well, my wife Claudia is with us, and my son David, who's 8 years old, Katie, she's 5, and then our youngest son Stephen, he's 4 months. Our little daughter Amanda stayed with Grandma and Grandpa. She's 2 years old. She wanted to stay with them today. Okay,
well, we appreciate your bringing them along. Patrick, let's talk about Alaska a little bit. Did that spark your interest in painting wildlife paintings per se?
Well, not really. It's just when I lived in Oklahoma, my family, I have 2 older brothers, we always enjoyed the outdoors, and we read the sporting magazines, and during that time, during the 60s, some of the really great illustrators were still doing illustrations for magazines like Sports Afield, Outdoor Life, and those were a real inspiration to me because I already loved the drawing and painting, and then to see to have the connection with the outdoors just made it that much more enjoyable. So when I was younger, that's what I did, was animal paintings, wildlife paintings, and the lure of Alaska, so to speak, was just kind of icing on the cake. That was the far-off dream. If I ever got to go there, I could paint the animals and birds of Alaska. And as it turned out, during my service time, I got to go there and really enjoyed it. And then after Claudia and I were married, we had an opportunity to go up there and spent 5 years in Alaska, and thoroughly enjoyed it. We just moved back to Oklahoma about a year ago.
Well, we're glad to have you back in the state.
Oh, it's great to be back. Yeah.
Now, are you planning any other great adventures, like going back to Alaska? Are you going to be with us here in Oklahoma for a while?
We're Okies to stay.
Okay. You said you originally started painting in oil, and now you are painting in acrylics. Is that right? Okay, well, why don't we start out and show our viewers a few examples of your work and let them have an idea just exactly what it is that Patrick does.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's go to our video segment. Okay, Patrick, here we are.
Yeah, this isn't exactly a wildlife painting. This is one I've done recently. Since we moved back to Oklahoma, I wanted to start doing some paintings more along a historical vein. Some of the things that may have taken place or actually took place in Oklahoma. I've always had a great interest in the early pioneer days of the state and things, the prairies the way they used to be. Well, here we've gone to another one of, this is a black jaguar, and
Oh, he's beautiful. Love the amount of detail that you have in that painting.
well, thank you. I researched the background, the surroundings, the plant life. These are, well, even some of down to some of the mushrooms that actually grow down there in Brazil. This one's a polar bear. I still send work up to Alaska to a gallery that I deal with up there, so I still do Alaskan subjects. And the polar bear wander around on the ice floes up there in the Arctic, and they're a very popular subject with the local people as well as the tourists that come up there. Now this is, you mentioned a magazine cover. This is a piece that I recently did for a bow hunting magazine. I think we'll see a close-up of the hunter here pretty soon, but this is an Alaskan brown bear in a typical background scene in the salmon stream. And the bears during the summer and early fall go along and eat the salmon that come up to spawn.
Well, your experiences in Alaska are certainly well translated into your paintings.
Well, I found out that there's nothing like actually being there. You know, you can get some reference from books you read or magazines or whatever, but there's nothing like the experience of being there to show you the finer details. This is a print of a painting that I did for Ducks Unlimited, which is a conservation organization nationwide that started to help advance the habitat development for duck and goose populations. And these are a couple little black Labrador puppies in the print. Now this is another print of for another conservation organization. It's the International Moose Federation. And a lot of these organizations produce a print like this to sell and usually a stamp to go along with it for fundraising purposes, sort of patterned along the idea of the federal duck stamp and the state duck stamp programs. This is another print of a painting of a lynx, which live in Alaska, and the flowers there that you see are fireweed, and it's a real common flower in Alaska with a little birch tree in the background there. But lynx are really sort of a secretive animal that you don't see very often. They're sort of like the bobcat here in Oklahoma. There are quite a few of them around, but you don't see them very often. They're a beautiful animal.
And you did get to see one of those.
Well, I saw one out at the zoo in Anchorage, actually. Took my camera out there and spent the day.
Okay.
Now, this is a scene, the background, actually, I carry my camera with me a lot when I go hunting or just on photography trips, but the background is from out in central Oklahoma. My brother and I were turkey hunting, and I used that for the background on the scene there. Now, this country here is typical of the area of Alaska where we lived. It's spruce and birch forest area, and some of the moose that live in the forests there get pretty big. This is a pretty big moose here. He's wandering through the forest. That time of year is the mating season for him, and the bulls it's really exciting to hunt them. We call them with a birch bark call, just like the natives used to and still do.
Well, Patrick, beautiful paintings.
Thank you very much.
And a tremendous amount of detail. When I look at those, I immediately think of Audubon. Of course, he's probably the best known of all the American wildlife painters. I might mention to our viewers that the idea of creating the background that would be appropriate for the animal is something that has a historical background to it. John Audubon was very interested in doing that. If he was going to paint duck, it would have to be in the right kind of water with
Absolutely.
the right kind of weeds and so forth. And I can certainly tell you've been doing your homework in that respect too.
Well, it pays off, and in fact, most of the people that buy the type of work I do are very particular about that. If you have an animal, say the moose, in a setting that's not appropriate, they're quick to tell you about it. And I've been told a few times too.
Okay, well, it's really beautiful, and your foliage and your trees and so forth are also
I
very
really
nice.
enjoy doing it. It may look tedious to some people, but it's really a pleasure for me.
If you're going to do a job, you'd like to do it correctly.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's see. I wanted to mention the magazine cover again. Now, we've seen the brown bear, and that will be on the cover of which magazine, Patrick?
It's called Professional Bow Hunter magazine. It's a small circulation magazine, but the people that are members of this organization are very dedicated to their sport, and they're as much conservationists as they are hunters. And they publish a quarterly magazine, and this is going to be on their fall issue.
And we can expect to find that on the newsstand in September?
Right.
And will it be on a newsstand, or do you have to belong to the organization to
I'm not
buy it?
really sure. I think they sell them on the newsstand. I don't know how many stores in Oklahoma would have them. Probably archery shops would be more likely to carry them.
Okay, well, give our viewers something to look forward to.
Right.
In that particular painting, now, you were commissioned to paint a brown bear specifically.
Right.
The magazine said this is the particular subject we're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about working on commissioned works like that?
I enjoy it. In fact, I've had a good experience. I've had good experience doing commission work. I enjoy working with people, and it's real gratifying to people a lot when they have an idea and they're able to, through working with the artist, get that idea just the way they want it. You know, they have some, you know, the concept in their mind, but not the ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I come in, and it's really a pleasure to do that.
One other thing, while we're kind of remembering back to that video segment, we did have the stamp there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would the stamp be available, or would the art collector buy the print, get the portfolio, and the stamp?
That all comes together, but the stamps are, most of the programs like that do have the stamps available because many stamp collectors like to buy just the stamp. I did the first Oklahoma duck stamp back in 1980, and they also printed a print to go along with it. And I still get stamps in the mail from different collectors asking me to sign a stamp for them for the collection, because most of the time they want to have a mint stamp and a signed one together, you know, for the collection. So, you know, the stamps usually are included with the print.
How do you feel about having your paintings turned into a print that's printed in multiple copies?
Well, on the one hand, I know a lot of artists that are strictly what they consider themselves fine artists that look at offset lithography reproductions is a more proper term, I suppose, rather than a hand-pulled print, and don't like the idea. On the other hand, for an artist like myself, I look at it as being able to get my work around to the general public more, because there are a lot more people that can afford $75 for a print or whatever the price is than can afford a couple thousand or whatever for an original. And people, the general public, feels more like they're involved in the art collecting, and they get an excitement about it. I know from buying prints of other artists, I enjoy it, and it just gives a wider group of people the opportunity to have art that they might not otherwise be able to have.
Okay, well, I certainly agree with your thinking there and appreciate your sharing that with our viewers. What I'd like to do next is go to our second video segment and let our viewers have a chance at watching your work and let you share maybe some tricks of the trade and a little of your technique with them.
Right.
So let's go to our second video segment.
Well, this is where I'm working with my little easel set up in the living room. I enjoy working with the family close by. And, this is a painting that I just started. The way I work on a masonite panel, and I pencil it in. What we've gone to here is a picture from a magazine, and I'm explaining that especially wildlife artists use pictures from books that they clipped out, but it's very, very important to either get the photographer's permission to use a picture if you're going to use a picture exactly as the photograph was, or only use it for as much reference as you need to make an original drawing or painting of the animal and not make it exactly like the photograph. These are some photographs that I've taken myself for backgrounds around the house there and different places. The cloud formation in the first one there was one that I used for the two fellows on the horses in the buffalo herd. And I like to do that whenever the opportunity comes up. I carry my camera with me all the time, and whenever I see something that looks, oh, here we go, there's my filing system.
I like that filing system.
It's real sophisticated, and
it works well, right?
Right. I've got a couple of large boxes full of those grocery bags, and I have it all the way down to maybe the different species of ducks, and red fox or gray fox or Arctic fox. And these are some photographs that I've taken of some of the scenes that I might use for background. A lot of times I'll use one particular part of a photograph and not the entire thing. This is a palette that I use. It's a paper palette that you can, when you're finished for the day, you can just strip off the paper and throw it away. And the colors, the color arrangement I use there, I was pointing out the colors I have on the left in the foreground is burnt umber, next is burnt sienna, yellow ochre, red, purple, ultramarine blue, and then yellow that I've pointed to, and then I have white in the middle. And I always use that same arrangement, just because I'm used to it being that way. And this is another color that I haven't really been able to mix from the other colors, and it's a really nice kind of a pale turquoise for sky colors between the clouds, like at sunset.
Seems to me like you see so much of that blue in the sky, particularly in the western part of the United States.
Yeah, there's where the air is clear, right?
Right, that's right. And here it is, in the background of one of your paintings.
Right. This is a painting I just recently finished of more or less a nostalgic type scene, or a sporting scene of a man and his boy returning home in the evening after a day of pheasant hunting, but a couple of them are still around, hopefully a lot more than that around in the foreground here by the old wagon. And
beautiful afternoon sky.
Thank you. The old barn there, and this was more of probably a upper Midwestern background with spruce and birch forest, and they've got their cornfield out, and there's one of the pheasants that got away. Give them some enjoyment another day.
Beautiful painting, Patrick.
Thank you. Now the deer here is still penciled in. I haven't put any paint on it yet. What I do on these paintings, I'll pencil them in, get the composition pretty much the way I want it, and then I'll start with an underpainting with a fairly large brush and brush the large areas of the background in. You can see the trees there that I've started to put in, and when this is finished, I should have brought the painting back today, but I didn't, and there will be a lot more trees in the painting, but I work sort of like doing underpaintings and then painting right on top of it, and that's one of the things I like about acrylic, is that it does dry fast enough. This particular brush I'm using here is a synthetic bristle, but the bristles in it are fairly long and really pliable and flexible, and it's a very good brush for doing the larger areas there and getting the different highlights and subtleties on the different planes on the ground. When I go to putting the brush and things in the foreground, I'll go to a smaller brush, a round brush with sable bristles in it. And I think that's the one I have there, yeah.
That's a little short bristle brush.
With a pretty sharp point. This is a long bristled liner brush, it's called. And when I'm doing the trunks of the trees or the trunks of some of the underbrush in the foreground, I'll use that for the stems or even the blades of grass. Yeah, we're working pretty rough here. I'm glad we saw the finished ones at the beginning so people would know what they look like. But you can see
all paintings have to have a beginning. It's interesting to see that they do begin very loose and working with broad areas, and then you work down to that fine detail. And each one of those trees now are going to be done singly.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Patrick, how long does it take you to complete a painting like this?
This one is about, I think the measurement is 12 by 24 inches, and I'll probably end up spending about 30 hours on it total. Of course, that varies a lot depending on how many animals you have in it or how much detail in the foreground.
Well, we appreciate your sharing with us your technique and letting our viewers have a chance to watch you working. I think we all go to the gallery and we see finished works of art,
Right.
but we seldom have an opportunity to listen to the artist talk about the way he approaches that painting. And I think sometimes when someone sees a very realistic painting with a lot of detail, that they think perhaps the artist starts out in the upper left-hand corner
Right.
with a very small brush and goes one stroke at a time all the way down.
Right.
So it is a matter of establishing the overall composition in the broad areas and then coming to the detail.
Right. It usually goes a lot faster than most people think. It's like anything else. The more you practice at it, you overcome some of the little stumbling blocks that may come up in the beginning, and then you learn how to do, well, like for instance, I did a painting with the whole hillside covered with spruce trees, and I thought, gee, I've got to paint every one of these little trees, and I figured out a way of doing an underpainting and then doing almost a little squiggle line for each tree that went really fast, and as they all went together, it was like they ended up looking like they were overlapped, and it looked like, you know, you could go crazy painting all these trees, and actually it didn't take very long at all.
In a painting like the painting of the brown bear, would the painting all of that fur on the bear, is that what constitutes the major part of your time?
No, really. If you look at the overall painting, probably what takes the most time is the background. The animal is the fun part, you know. And I do try to put enough, or the most detail probably in the face of the animal, especially the eyes, because it's like looking at another person. You always look at their eyes, and so when people look at the painting, that's usually the area they go to first, is the face of the animal, and then they kind of go around and find other things. And I do like to put other things in the painting where, you know, it makes looking at the other parts of the painting a little more interesting too.
We had a painter on one time who said he'd like to have surprises.
Yeah.
You come in and you see the major thing, this is the
Right.
brown bear, and then you get the surprises of seeing the salmon spawning and so
Right.
forth. Well, I guess almost all painters like to do that. You said you carried your camera with you at almost all times. Have you ever thought about being a photographer?
Well, not professionally. I think that's, you know, I feel like I've still got so much to learn about painting, and it'll take me the rest of my life, and I probably still won't be satisfied. It's like framing, you know. People ask me if I do my own framing. Well, I want to spend all my time painting. I enjoy photography very much, but I'm certainly not anywhere near a professional.
Well, I just was curious about that. I want to talk to you just a minute before we get ready to close here about being an Oklahoman and living in northeastern Oklahoma. You've already told us that you're interested in doing some historic paintings from this area.
Right.
Do you have any other feelings that you might share with us about how this part of the country contributes to what you do?
Well, I don't know if most people are aware of how much history we have here in all of Oklahoma. I sure wasn't until I started really investigating things, and there so much has gone on, like, well, Fort Gibson, for instance, built back in, I think, in the 1830s, and so many different things have gone on, and like out at Fort Sill, or the types of wildlife that used to be abundant in Oklahoma A lot of people don't know that there used to be grizzly bears living in Oklahoma out on the plains, and wolves. And I'd like to do sort of something that combines not only the history, including the people, but also incorporate my feeling for wildlife in the paintings too. And I've got quite a few ideas that I'm excited about.
Oh, that certainly sounds exciting. Well, it sounds like then that you're very happy to be in Oklahoma, and very proud of your history here. One other thing, you mentioned your family and the fact that as a young boy you'd done some hunting and out in the outdoors with your family. Would you say then your major influence in your life comes from your family, or are there some particular artists that you would also say are major influences in what you're doing now?
Well, of course, you get inspired and humbled at the same time looking at, we have such a great facility here with Gilcrease to go out there and see all that they have. My major influence is, I'm a Christian, and I get my major influence, I feel, from my devotion to the Lord. And my family is very supportive. Not only my wife and children, but my family has always supported me, even when I was very young. My dad was a printer, and he brought home scrap paper for us to draw on, and they just, all kinds of encouragement. So it's been really great. Yeah, I just get encouragement everywhere, really.
Well, that's wonderful, and it all shows in your work, and it shows in your enthusiasm for what you're doing. It's just been a real pleasure to talk with you today, because I can see as I talk to you that we have a person with us who's really enjoying what they're doing, and gets a great deal of satisfaction out of that. And we appreciate your sharing not only your work with us today and your working techniques, so we appreciate your sharing that enthusiasm for northeastern Oklahoma and for being an artist with us.
Well, thank you very much.
And we appreciate your taking your time. Well, we seem to be getting very close to being out of time, so I need to do a few concluding remarks here today. Fall semester is now getting underway at Rogers State College. If you are planning to join us for a class, you better hurry, because classes are already underway and time to close enrollment is almost over. If you are interested in the subject of art history and you can't get enrolled in the class, I certainly would invite you to at least tune in to my art history class, Art History 1400 to 1850, which you can watch here on KXON TV 35 without being enrolled, and pick up some information about art history. And until next time, this is Barbara Cohen-Hour, wishing you a most pleasant good evening.